Wake up in the morning, I just gotta get it. Wake up in the morning, I just gotta get it.
All right, welcome everyone to the Schoology Learning podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is the podcast where we talk about some things we're hearing out in the world about education, as well as some tips and tricks about our favorite platform, which is, of course, Schoology. My name is Kellie Adie, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ericka Waterman.
Hey, Kellie. I'm so excited for us to take this time. I just remember how fun it was when I was teaching to take the lunchtime or, any little break that we had and just kind of talk with colleagues. So hopefully everyone can join us and just get a little chit chat about education and Schoology while they're at it.
Yeah, so let's get started. Well, we both live in areas that can be, you're in an area that's much more prone, I think, to like extreme cold.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Denver's a little bit mild, but I as usual, perusing my news feeds, and up pops this article from Newsweek about snow days. And it's funny because we had just had like a day that was, pretty questionable where, like when you're like listening for like, okay, at what time is the call going to come just in case it's like super bad somewhere. But the title of the article was "Are Snow Days Making a Comeback?" And I wondered, especially given, where you live, I don't know what's happening where you are, but like where I am, it kind of goes between a virtual learning day and or they just simply say it's going to be a snow day. But I know that after COVID, a lot of people were like, oh, wait, like maybe we can capture back some instructional time and not sacrifice it. And I wonder, like, is the pendulum swinging back to like, oh no, we need the snow day?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. Because the educator in me is torn, right? Because
Yeah.
I remember like there's such a joy, that moment when you find out that you unexpectedly don't have to go to work or for kids don't have to go to school, that moment of pure joy that exists. And you're like, this whole day just opened up. Like it was magical, both as a student and as a teacher. I do remember just like the full joy of that. But then there was always a price. You had to make up that day, right?
Yeah.
It always had to happen. And so then it became oh, well, now I'm going to school later in June when
Right.
I was like, oh, that one random day off was fun, but I would rather get out of school early and go enjoy my summer break,
Yeah. And I actually was thinking about also sometimes the inequity of, not inequity, but like when you have a day that's in the first semester, but you have to make it up in the second, like,
Yeah, and you have
that's not the
classes.
day I needed it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
could see why, with all our technology and like you mentioned with with everything that educators had to do with and students with during COVID when nobody could go to school
Yeah.
and all the virtual learning, they got really good at, hey, here's a lesson that you can do on your own.
Yeah.
Or, using different mediums of video calls, I guess, to keep it as generic as possible.
Yeah.
So I could
Well,
also see why, it does play a role, right?
it's a role. And I also, my oldest son is now teaching second grade, and now he's got like a different perspective on all this, of course, than he did as let's just say a mediocre high school student. Like, it's not setting the world on fire necessarily. But he was talking about also kind of the reality of, especially because he's in elementary, he's like, it didn't occur to me that if some kids don't go to school, they don't get meals. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's legit. Like there's a bigger role there, which is hard to like, yes, it's magical, but it's not magical maybe for everyone. So I sort of can see why there's like a lot of like thinking through, like, do we really do this? Do we really do a snow day? So, or in inclement weather, we should call it that because
Yeah. Oh, because there's things happening all over the place.
right.
And You know, I know the school districts around me, and I've heard of this in other places in the country where they, you know, they provide like, hey, students, if we're going to have a day off that normally we don't, here's stuff you can take home so that you do
Yeah.
get those meals. But again, on those inclement days where it's like, you know, that's when you're not supposed to be traveling. So you're not going to go to school to pick up a meal bag, right? So that's a really good point, that it definitely has its not equitable for everybody on
Yeah.
the side, for sure.
But on the other hand, I mean, we overcame a lot of issues with student-based tech during COVID. So like students having a device was really a question for a while. It's maybe
Yeah.
less of a, it's more of a question, did they bring it home, I guess, but it's much more, I think, expected that students have access probably to something just based on everything we had to go through. It's almost a given, I think, in some districts, like, yeah, everybody, I get a new computer every year or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it was making me think like we had this big push on all of the kind of the virtual learning tools. And we still have those. And so now I'm thinking like, if you did do a virtual learning day, like what do we have that would actually really support that maybe we didn't have during COVID? Like,
Yeah. Oh, because, you know, even with technology, like we're partners with Google and Microsoft with Schoology. And even, you know, we had things, obviously, you know, integrations with their documents. But now, like, they've even upped their game. Like,
yeah,
now we have the Google Meets and the Microsoft Teams, which are the new apps that are out. They've just made those integrations that much better, which
yeah,
means it can just be incorporated into Schoology that much easier.
yeah,
So it's, even though we're kind of going back from not having to do so much virtual, all that technology is still there, and actually better than it was.
yeah, agreed. And I remember, when we were first scrambling with COVID of trying to figure out like the best of, like everyone had like a different virtual tool. And now it seems like everyone really got that figured out, which is great. And now that you can add it so much more easily, Schoology, I'm like, if only it had been like it still worked, and it worked as best as it could back when we didn't know that was going to happen. But I was also thinking about even like even some of the assignment options that we have now would be, I think, so much like better to have to tackle. Like I know that we're working on like things like the completion rules and like all these things that really support when you have to learn asynchronously, or whether it's due to inclement weather or not. Like I guess I don't want people to lose some of the power that actually is built for virtual environments, even if we're not always in virtual environments.
Yeah, because it is, I do think it is a life skill. I mean, I think about how much I use it on a day-to-day basis. So while I'm so thankful that we can be back in person, because obviously I think that social interaction, all of that is incredibly important. That face-to-face, like I still enjoy meeting my colleagues and talking with them together instead of over a screen. But I'm still able to accomplish things. It's still a very big part of, I think, the workforce. And so, you know, having that skill, I think it not only, like you said, can kind of make that snow day or that inclement weather day into just a virtual learning day, but it also kind of teaches that skill of bouncing back and forth. If I can't be in the office, or if I can't meet with somebody face to face, how do I still get the things done that I need to?
Yeah. Well, I also like appreciate some of the thought behind what it takes to do really good, like virtual learning. And
Mm.
while people didn't necessarily have those skills, hardwired going into when they had to have them during COVID, I think
You
a
mean
lot
the
of people,
crash course that
yes,
everybody
the
experienced?
emergency learning,
Yeah,
yes.
like, and figure it out now.
Yeah, and figure it out. I feel like also people are so much better at handling
Mhm.
technology for that purpose and being thoughtful around maybe you shouldn't record yourself lecturing for 60 minutes. Like maybe that's not the best way. Um, However, the other thing that I think surfaces whenever we talk about inclement weather days in terms of a school district perspective, like you said, sometimes because of seat time requirements, you've got to make those days up. If you
Yeah.
like, at least here, we usually had a buffer of like a certain number of days where we had like freebies. And then once you like ran out of those, then it was like, guess what's happening in June? But I also was thinking about all the things that now are in place to also help us maybe think differently about seat time. So then I'm like wondering, like, when do we start thinking about learning not as how long people spent on something or in class or whatever, and measuring learning a little bit differently. But that being said, it still is helpful to take a look at, were they in? Did they log in? How long did they
Yeah.
take on this assignment?
Yeah.
And I know that like for our tools we have like course analytics, kind of helpful to see if a student was in and when's the last time they logged in and how long did it take them to do this?
Yeah, because that, to your point of how long should we require students to do something, I may be able to finish something in 8 minutes because I'm naturally competitive and always wanted to be faster than everyone, which made zero sense because no one knew I was racing them. It was just my own in my head. So, I might get done with something really quickly. It might take someone else much longer. And does that matter if we both were able to prove that we understood the concept, right?
Right.
And so it's a good point where course analytics is helpful. It's especially helpful to see the kids who like didn't try at all, or the ones who maybe, they might need a little extra help because
Right.
it took them longer on this than I was anticipating it taking.
Yeah, I remember looking through, and this was way back in the day, but I remember like asking kids, like, how long did this take you? And some of them would give me a response, and I'm like, okay, there's a disconnect here because that should not have taken
Yeah.
that long. So now that there's like a better way to gauge that, I do appreciate it. And not just for like the virtual learning aspect, but just, having a better idea
Overall.
about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is interesting, like the different states, the different districts, the different requirements of what counts, what doesn't, is this enough? Is it not enough? And it's, I don't know that anybody will ever come to a complete consensus. But at least it's helpful information to know, no matter how your district chooses to handle it. That course analytics can have a lot of benefit to taking a
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the other thing that could potentially benefit like thoughts around this is maybe, I don't know, getting the student perspective on it. Because I feel like, and maybe this is just me because I hear my husband talking about his students a lot. So this is a very tiny sample size based on Michael 80. But he
Yeah.
was saying that kids seem to be much more cognizant about things like, because we talked about cell phone policy in an earlier podcast, and he was talking about how cognizant they are of why that actually is better for them to have their phone put away during learning, because they are recognizing that that's a distraction for them. So part of me wonders, like, well, maybe with inclement weather days or thinking about learning differently, if they maybe got a chance to reflect on how this did work or didn't work, or would that change our perspectives on what happens on us? Now, granted, there'll be kids that'll be like, we don't want to do anything ever,
Well, right. Yeah. That's
which
just
is
the
part of the
nature of
magic part you
that.
talked about.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's unavoidable, and
Yeah. Well, and I wonder how much of it comes down to just honestly each kid's motivation and support
right.
and how that works. Because I have two sons. One he would have been like, forget it. I'll deal with the fallout of what I have to do another day. I'm not doing it today. And the other would be like, I'm cranking this stuff out till I'm done. And then I get to have the rest of my day for free. Right. So,
Yeah.
there's definitely a personality aspect, but I also think, our addition, and we talk a lot about PowerBuddy, but that ability for the districts that are using our PowerBuddy for learning, the student chat,
Mhm.
because I know sometimes the motivation to not get started on something is not knowing either how to get started, not knowing. And if like I'm working during the day, I can't help my student who's at home, who might be struggling with a homework assignment and starts it, but then immediately shuts down because they feel like they can't get through it.
Yeah. Well, think also about if you were on the teacher side of it and all of a sudden you see the writing on the wall, like we're not going to have school tomorrow, and we are having a virtual learning day. And then you having to think about, well, what am I going to create? Like, oh, well, you could ask PowerBuddy, like you could actually go in and actually get some help to like, not to like spend a lot of like mental calories on building something, get some ideas for them to do on their own with some supports, and then they'll have a potentially a way to get in-person help while they're not with you synchronously.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I forgot that, in my kind of playing around with the PowerBuddy for the content generation side, which everyone should have, the ability to tell it like, hey, the students are going to be at home. So make sure it's something they can do on their own or, at home with things in their house that are very, very common. I was impressed with how it recognized what would be a common item, how to incorporate that into a lesson. I tried it with math and science just because I thought those might be a bit trickier. And it was interesting, like how some of the things that it came up with. Now, obviously not all those things that I was looking up are your topic of the day on an inclement weather day. It doesn't always work out perfect. But, asking it and just seeing what it comes up with, again, just to your point, helps alleviate that you having to try and come up with something.
Right. And then worrying about like getting it out to kids. And I know that for my husband, he was like, it's great when I can just say it's just on Schoology. In fact, for those of you school OGs listening, you might remember that we had a t-shirt that said, it just said it's on Schoology. That's all it said. So that as a teacher, if a kid's like, hey, what did I miss yesterday? You're like, hey, it's on Schoology.
On Schoology.
And I kind of wish we still had that shirt, to be honest.
Oh my gosh, we might have to, breathe new life into this concept because I love it.
It really was great. And people asked us if we could have posters of like, it's on Schoology. I was like,
you could just point to it all the time and just yell. What I've been telling you over and over.
Over and over
all year
again.
long. Yes. Well, and that I think really is the fun of working with an LMS, is knowing that we're kind of providing a lot of ways to help teachers manage content where I didn't have a learning management system when I was teaching. And, so then I always had to try and do a quick explanation or pass a worksheet, hope they caught on. I just didn't have a really good system for catching people up. So to your point, whether you do virtual day or not, and whether that student does their work or not, the fact you can house it in a place that everybody can access, I think it's just such a crucial part of the functionality of Schoology.
Yeah, agreed. And I also love that it can be anything. It can be blended, it can be in person, it can be those inclement weather or purely virtual learning if you want. And I'm kind of excited to see kind of where things go now.
Mhm.
And not just with like, are snow days making a comeback, but yeah, how do we rethink learning a little bit?
Yeah. It's always exciting to think about the changes coming down. Little scary always. Yep. But also exciting because, you look back and we were talking to my sons about my grandmother, who was born in 1912 and like all the things that she saw. Right. And it was just like, the one room schoolhouse to like, like education really has evolved, even though we still have a lot of traditions that haven't. There is so much that have changed, and it'll be exciting to see how Schoology plays a role in that.
So speaking of roles, I guess our our poll question, for this one, we know that everyone has a different way of handling inclement weather or those days off. We would like to know, how is your school district handling it? Are you seeing a return back to snow days, or maybe you never left it, or do you do virtual learning days and that's just the expectation? Very curious to hear where everybody is.
Yeah. So scan the QR code, click on the link, go to the user toolbox. It's at the bottom of Schoology. It'll take you there and you can participate, and we'll see who's winning out, what the big trend is.
And in the meantime, if you do get inclement weather, I hope that you have a helpful shoveler, Ericka. I'm putting that your way.
Thank you. I so appreciate that.
Well, thanks for joining this episode of the Schoology Learning podcast. hope to see you next time where we'll talk about some more topics of interest and, of course, talking about our favorite platform, Schoology.
And in the meantime, if you click on the user toolbox at the bottom of the Schoology page, there are lots of resources out there, including other episodes of this podcast to listen to. Until next time.
And hope to see you next time. Thanks all.